Tommy Vext, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now, here's your host. Incarceration, America's rock, metal, and tattoo festival returns this summer with Limp Bizkit, Disturbed, Bad Omens, plus Gojira, Papa Roach, A Day to Remember, Motionless in White, Ice Nine Kills, Cypress Hill, The Used, and so many more. Incarceration at the Ohio State Reformatory, July 17th to 19th. Passes on sale now at incarceration.com.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle, and I always enjoy the conversations I have with this man right here, and I'm proud to call him a friend today, Mr. Tommy Vext. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm chilling, brother. Just, putting out fires on a Monday, doing what we do. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I was out celebrating my little stepdaughter's birthday,
Nice.
with her, and yeah.
Did you guys do anything for the 4th?
We just went to a friend's, hung out and cooked out.
We're at the age of low key now, with the sober low key 4th of July.
Exactly. What's weird though too, and I was telling my fiance's dad, not to get too far off the subject, but I think I got like food poisoning or something, and I woke up, started with a headache. And then it built up to I was throwing up, and I was just like, man, I remember these days after the 4th when I would be doing that for a whole completely different reason. It's just like the body don't forget.
So whenever I get sick, it's a nice reminder that I'm not hungover all the time anymore.
Yeah, exactly, man. So I wanted to kind of catch up since the last time you were on here, man. I mean, you've been a very busy man, and like one of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on is just like, I mean, the respect I gained for you for weathering a lot of storms, and kind of like going back to when you were just out of the Bad Wolves and we headed into, the uncertainty of the world, was going down and everybody being put on timeout and everything. And, you faced a lot of scrutiny for standing your ground and speaking your mind. And what do you feel like helped you get through that?
Well, I mean, I don't know what helped me get through the I mean, the cancel culture thing, 2020, like COVID for 2 years, it was like this weird cultural social phenomenon that went on, and I think in the future people will study it, how people reacted, and obviously there were people who are deathly like hypochondriac level deathly afraid that they were going to die from breathing air every second, and then you had other people with sort of common sense but went along, like didn't want to ruffle any feathers or get in trouble, and then you had outliers. You had like people like me and Andy Frisella or Ian Smith, and who were sort of outspoken about it. And, during that time, I think it was all the people, the support of all the people in that community, and also like a lot of the fans. Like I found my experience exiting out of the band was that the majority, I would say 85% of the fans were of the same mindset, and that the 15% of the people who really got pissed off were the industry people. And so it also became politicized, which is weird because it's like a viral pandemic should have been a nonpartisan issue, right? Because a virus shouldn't care. but we saw, I saw specifically through traveling, like there was, concerted efforts in different states had more severe lockdowns based on who was running the states. And then I obviously, 5, 6 years later, we know that there was a lot of funny money going on between, people in power and large, like massive $1 trillion pharmaceutical conglomerates and blah, 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 blah. So, there was like, all the conspiracy theorists who sort of were like outcasts are just, now we just all like, yeah, every day something comes out and we're like, yep, right about that. Like, yeah, right about that. But from me personally, I feel like the world's moved on from it. I kind of just look at it as like worse things happen to worse people, like should I say worse things have happened. And yeah, just like everybody was insane and everybody was terrified. And so when people are terrified, they do they act unreasonable and they make permanent decisions that that aren't necessarily, some it could affect them worse than others. And so I made decisions. Those are I got the repercussions of saying my opinions and saying things that are now just truth and facts, like my criticisms of, where the money was going with BLM, that turned out to be true. There are full documentaries about how that, the money was being stolen. My criticisms about the lockdowns being scientifically ineffective, because I had friends who were immunologists and virologists, because I'm a nerd and I have nerdy friends. And these are the people who I was, I kind of was taking information from, and then that also turned out to be true. So there's just so many things, the vaccine efficacy, right? It's like you can see, there are YouTube videos of all the news from the time that they came out, and people like Rachel Maddow saying it's 100% effective, and then they're like it's 90% effective, and then it's 65% effective, and that as the weeks went on and the months went on, they're like it's 3% effective, you know and so I think that the world got a lesson and not the veil drops. It's like the whole machine is one thing, and when they want to make the public believe something, the whole machine links up, and the people. There's very few handful of people in power, and they push out a message, and everyone was unaware that that was the case. I think 90% of the population understands this now. I think the Epstein thing, the whole the mishandling of the Epstein files, all that stuff is obviously proof that all these people, if they're not directly involved, they have friends who are involved, and like, most people are like, if you hurt children, you should go to jail or you should get shot by a firing squad. And it seems like the law only applies to the working class and poor people, um, to keep us in line. And so
Yeah.
there's no more for me. It's just I don't even look at left and right anymore. I'm like, whatever, dude.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
I'm
just
definitely in the same boat with you. I mean, we've talked, offline about kind of where we're at today. But I mean, going back to like band stuff, I mean, Bad Wolves were pretty hot, and then
yeah.
this stuff happened, and you did your research and you stood your ground and spoke your mind, and then next thing you know, like friendships, years of friendships, and that's proof what the media is capable of. Families were being torn apart, and in
Mhm.
a way, your family was torn apart during that time.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like, I've made amends with everybody, all the former members except Doc. And Doc is a political extremist, right? He's like a far left wing extremist guy. He's been that way. Like, it's not like he changed. That's just always been who he is. We've been friends for over 20 years, and his entire identity and belief system is like wrapped in that. And like, he personifies that. And so he's not in a place where, he's still like in his mind, it's still like the things failed and it's my fault. You know, I still, there are still some people who are like, Tommy destroyed the band. I'm like, I haven't been in the band in 6 years. They've had two singers and they've had a record label throw, you know, probably $10 million of investing into them to try to rebuild it. It has nothing to do with me. Like, it's not, I'm not a part of that, you know, and it's a, you know, so it's like, it's unfortunate that I still, like, it's a convenient scapegoat, but I was the one who was like excommunicated from the music industry for 3 or 4 years, and just you know,
Yeah.
and set, just like went and lived life, and you know now, and then I got called back, you know, and
Yeah.
so you know it's unfortunate. The single that we're putting out, you know, is called Shared Light, and it's about like the reunion and families coming back together and friendships mending, and it's sort of a microcosm for what happened with me and Chris and everybody. You know, I think a lot of people have abandoned far right wing and far left wing. It's just at this point it's not worth it to me, and I don't think it's worth it to anybody to lose relationships with the people that I love because they think differently than me
Hmm.
for a group of politicians who none of them give a fuck about us anyway, to the
Yeah.
for the most
Exactly.
part. And they're not, you know, and some people, lots of people come into politics thinking they're going to change things, and I think that just for the most part the system is working, the machine is working the way it's supposed to. People say things like, oh, the machine's broken and it needs to be fixed. The reality is that the machine is doing exactly what it's doing. It's dividing the population, so the bottom of the pyramid never look at the top.
Hmm.
It's creating, you know, distortions of reality so that we're more afraid of our neighbors than we are of our government spying on us and all that stuff. And all everybody, you know, nobody can say like, oh, I didn't fall for this, because everybody fell for something,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody,
Yeah.
we've all, that's the lyrics, we've all been wrong, we've all been right, but we're still under the same shared light. And I think focusing for me, you know, personally, spiritually, you know, focusing on God or your higher power, whatever it is that you believe in, the spiritual consciousness that exists in the universe that animates all life, that's beyond human control. It's beyond, you know, government. It's beyond borders. It's beyond anything. And intrinsically, as someone who's traveled all over the world, the one thing that I've noticed that's unifying in all of humanity is humans necessarily all want the same things. Like, we have different religions, different ethnicities, different belief systems, cultures, and customs. But most people, good people, they just want to love each other and be at peace and survive and
Yeah.
experience this thing called life. And and those frequencies are interrupted by the constant bombardment of, you know, what our devices are being used for, right? The internet was made to connect everybody, and it was for a while, and then it became one of the most dividing, destructive forces in all of human technology.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny too because you asked about what how my fourth went, Fourth of July went, and I was at my fiance's friend's house for a cookout in their backyard, and the neighbors next door was a Puerto Rican family, and they were celebrating in their backyard. And my fiance's like training to be she's a firefighter EMT, but she wants to become a chaplain. She's very spiritual, and so she
Oh,
had
nice.
some gifts to give the new neighbors. It was spiritual gifts from like a part of a rosary, and we took it over, introduced ourselves, we handed it to them. Next thing we know, that opened up them bringing us some of their food, us bringing them some, and then we were all like communicate, in community together. So it's an
Yeah,
example
and
of what you're
that's
just talking about, what's possible out there.
and that's the thing about like loving our neighbors and our community and bringing that energy into, you know, culture and society. That's God's. You know, I say God because that's my personal belief, but I believe that that's God's will for humanity. Is that, you know, there's an old saying, like, you know, I've been sober 17 years now, and I remember I went to a meeting when I was newer, and this guy was saying, he was telling this story, and I always refer to this story. This wealthy guy, he lived a great life. He had children, grandchildren. He was a philanthropist. He ran his businesses, and he created jobs for thousands of people, and was just one. He got sick. He was older, and when he died, he was in the hospital, and he got out of the bed. His spirit got up, and the Grim Reaper came to get him. And he was like, "Are you here to take me?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's time to go." And they go to the elevator, and they start going up. And he's like, "Am I going to heaven?" He's like, "Yeah." And he has the book of life. And he shows him, he's like, "You did all these great things. And, the creators really can't wait to meet you." And he's like, "Well," and being the curious mind that he had, he's like, can we see what hell's like first?" And he's like, he stops the elevator. He's like, "Okay." He's like, "All right, we can go see it, but we can only stay for a few minutes, and then we got to leave because you'll lose your mind down there." And he's like,
Mm.
"Okay." So they go all the way down. They like the elevator goes all the way down. The doors open up, and they're in this palace made out of platinum and gold, and it's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And it looks like what he thinks heaven is. And he's like, "Well," he's like, "We went to the wrong place." He's like, "No, this is it." And he's like, "Go through the hallway," and they walk through the halls, and they go to this room, and they hear all these people moaning, and they're like, "Oh!" And there's a banquet and a feast, and it's the most amazing food spread that he's ever seen in his entire life. And this man died with $1 billion, right? And he's like, it's the most exquisite dining thing, fit for kings and emperors. And all the people they're all skeletons, right? They're all starving, and they're handcuffed to the table, and they can't reach the food to their mouths. So, and they're trapped in hell, and they can never taste the food or drink the drinks. And he's like, "Oh my God." And he's like, "We gotta get out of here." So he's like, "I told you this place is fucked up." So him and Death go on the elevator, they go up to heaven, and they get all the way to the top floor, and the the doors open on the elevator, and they're in the same palace.
Wow.
And he's like, "We're still in hell." He's like, "No, we're not." He's like, "Just go, come on, go down the corridor." So they walk down these huge halls of marble and made and light, and they hear laughing, and he's like, It's this way." And they go into the room, and it's the same room, and all the people at the table are laughing and fat, and they're all having a great time, and they're cracking jokes, and they're all like, and they're handcuffed to the table, except they figure every person fed the person to the left and the right of them. They can
Wow.
reach the food to the next person. And so I always like that metaphor, because it's like, that's like heaven and hell on earth, right? Our spiritual um our peace and the amount of love that we have is literally uh it's in proportion to what we give, and we can't really receive until we give. And that's why greed is such a destructive thing, whether it's emotional greed or financial greed. The most of the problems in the world, there's enough money and enough food to end homelessness and starvation, but in order for that to happen, the top 1% could not remain the top 1%. They would have to be in the 10% of the richest. And because people are sick, they don't want to solve the problems, you know?
Yeah. 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 I like that analogy. Um, Now, during back during that time too, and you mentioned your faith. How much did I mean, you were standing up against a lot of criticism, and even created music that was getting canceled at the time. I mean, you had your song "Trust the Science,"
Mhm,
uh, your "Cancel the King."
mhm.
Uh, how much would you say your faith played a role in your strength to uh, weather that storm?
Well, I mean, like, the entire approach to why all those things happen. I got sober 17 years ago, right? In 2009, and May 18th, 2009. And in my first year of sobriety, I was told like I had to find a relationship with a higher power greater than myself, or I wasn't going to stay sober. And so I think for the first 11 or 12 years of my life, I had developed this relationship with a higher power. And when I started speaking out about this stuff, I started to experience like actual demonic attacks. And so it was literally in 2021, I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, but it wasn't through it, it wasn't through the divine inspiration or the seeking. It was that I had actually faced evil in human beings that was so um malevolent, like absolute malevolent narcissism, like that I I I literally was forced to believe. And so, I came to this sort of I came to this sort of place where I was like, if demons are real, then this has to be real.
Yeah.
And then I had several spiritual experiences, um, around having Christianity become part of my life. And I'm not a Bible thumper, or I'm not a I don't I study Christ's life, and I don't like how certain Christians use Christianity to sort of like persecute people, because if you
Yeah.
know the apostles and the like Jesus rode with a bunch of gangsters,
Yeah.
and that's the real true story, is like he rolled with some like motherfuckers. And I think that uh I personally had church burn as a kid, because
Hmm.
it was like the gatekeeping Christians, their hypocrisy made me not want anything to do with it. And then I realized, like, dude, if the devil is a liar, and if evil is real, evil is not going to go. The people who are doing evil already, they're like, we got you,
Yeah.
right? I believe that people who are trying to walk a line of faith are even more attacked and
Oh yeah.
persecuted spiritually. And what happens is that demons, like demonic energy, wants people who are posing as Christians to deflect anybody from being saved. And they don't realize they're doing that. They're using Christianity as a false sense of ego to make themselves feel above other people, when
Hmm.
that's not what Christ's message was. Like, Christ died on the cross for the sinner, not for the perfect. And nobody's
Yeah.
lived it. And you can't be Christian and think that you're living a perfect life. None of us have lived a perfect life. And
Yeah.
so, like, his that redemption for humanity. And this is the thing, like, if I'm wrong, so what? Like, I'm a better person now, for readopting these morals and principles into my life, than if I don't. So fuck it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I'm glad. I love having these types of. You connected me with Davey Oberlin,
Yeah, yeah.
and me and him got into the faith conversation. He was excited to talk about it. Not enough people, want to address these types of things on podcasts, I guess, because it's not hip or not cool. But I've been on my faith journey too. That I was raised Catholic. I had my, I experienced some flawed people that kept me, away from my higher power, my relationship with Jesus Christ, with God, because I put those people as the representation of God or the
Mhm,
church, and they're just flawed and sick like me, that need the
mhm.
help. Um, Now, I wanted to ask real quick too before we get into, with a vengeance. Um, Another thing that I've enjoyed listening to during your time of staying connected and creating music, you've done a lot of covers, added your own spin on
Mhm.
some covers that were sound amazing. What draws you to pick some of these songs?
A lot of them are there's I guess there's the two reasons are, some of them are personally the soundtracks to parts of my life. And you know I would just sing them anyway, and I'm like, oh, I'll just record it. And I'm lucky and I'm grateful that I'm like financially capable of just, well, I can like call the studio and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go in and record, you know.
Yeah.
So why not? And it's not, I get a lot of flack. Like people are like, oh, you're doing covers, and I'm like, I'm having a good time. You know what I mean? I'm literally just having a good time, and I try to sing things. A lot of the times, I try to sing things in styles that I can't do, right? Like, like I covered Chris Stapleton's version of Tennessee Whiskey, and at that time, I recorded that in 2020, and it was like I was not capable of singing that. So I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced that song, and then went in the studio and nailed it. It's just, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I went in and I made a heavy metal version of a Busta Rhymes song that is, to I think, the only metal. I think only Ronnie Radke is the only metal singer that has ever recorded anything that fast or faster in our genre. And it was it was super tricky, and I figured out how to do the whole thing in one go, and then I recorded it, and it was, I was like, what would it sound like if Busta Rhymes did a song with the guitar player Meshuggah? That's it.
Yeah.
And so I like, it's challenging, and and like, my father's favorite band was the Beatles, and the Beatles started out as a cover band. And the reason why they learned how to write is because they studied all these other hit song structures, and then reinvented what it was to write a hit song. And then, and then further along in their career, they completely deconstructed that, right? And threw it away and came up with all kinds of other creative stuff. So I think that I like to break rules, but also it's important to learn the rules. And in metal, I've been in death metal bands and punk bands, and I think that it's important to be a stewardship of songwriters and learn certain techniques and things that actually make songs more enjoyable for the audience, and then take what you specifically like what you want for yourself, and then sort of put it in there together. And that was sort of like, I think that's where the magic of some of the hit Bad Wolf songs come from, and you're going to hear a lot of that on the new With a Vengeance record.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I really love your version of "Take Me to Church." That one, I really like feel that one, and you can tell your passion in it. That was a song that you felt too when you were singing it, and and so many fans might not be able to experience that feeling of that song because that's not their genre. But then when they hear your version, you're bringing it to them. So that's
Well, sure. And also, in that, when I was recording that song, it was part of a spiritual journey,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so it's like it didn't. And that's the thing about lyrics, like people can interpret them in different ways. And when I was recording that song, for me, it meant something different than maybe what Hosier wrote it about.
yeah,
And I think people connect to that too, you know. And
yeah,
so sometimes it's the way that you sing something, or the way that you do it. It that spiritual, sort of that spirit, it comes out in the music. And I think,
yeah,
I think one of the most, whether he realized it or not, while he was alive, I feel like Dimebag Darrell as a guitar player was one of the most soulful, spiritual guitar players. Uh, because even when notes were sour or wrong, he made them beautiful. There were like no chords in the ether on that instrument that could go wrong, And it would go from being like super aggressive, and it was the whole gamut of masculine emotion, from this level of sad weepingness in the instrument to absolute like marching takeover, and sometimes it would be chaos. And so I think that, the goal is always to inject your soul into the performance if you can.
Yeah. Well, exactly what you were feeling when you were doing Take Me to Church. I felt your version the same way, because I've been, coming back, like what we were talking about earlier, how I was raised and what chased me away from the church or whatever, and it, I've been, with my fiance's help and stuff, I've been getting drawn back. I'm strengthening and working more on my relationship with God, not just my recovery, because I've kind of like, some days it's like I half measure the hell out of that,
Mhm.
but when I work on my
Mhm.
connection, yeah, when I work on my connection with God by building that relationship, life's a lot better. And that, I felt that in your song, that version of your song there for sure. Um, Now, I also liked Winds of Change, that collaboration you did with Yellow Wolf, Jelly Roll, and Struggle Jennings. And I remember,
Oh,
like, one of the last times you came through Cleveland, you were on tour with Struggle, and we connected there. Um, how did that whole thing come together?
oh, that's fun. That's interesting because me and Jelly were just talking about this the other day. So when we, so that was the first number one single that they had gotten. And Jelly and I met on Instagram in like 2018, I think, when Zombie came out, and I saw him. I used to follow The Rock on Instagram, and he posted him. The Rock posted something with Jelly Roll, and my buddy Lorenzo was on the show Ballers with The Rock, and we used to work out
No,
together,
Lorenzo, yeah,
yeah, we used to work out together in LA. He's from New York. We toured together. He used to be in a band, Sworn Enemy. He's one
yeah,
of my oldest friends. And I got put on. That's where I found Jelly Roll. I followed him. I was like, oh, I fuck with this guy. And then I saw Bunny and whatever. And then Jelly asked me to sing on a track. It was during COVID. I was still. Oh no, it might have. It was actually in 2019. It was before COVID. And he asked if I would sing on a track, and they offered me money, and I was like, nah, don't worry about it. And I sang the chorus, and it was actually the same. I recorded it with Joseph McQueen. It was the same session that I did Wildfire, which is a song that wound up getting released with the other singer on the third record. Almost more than half of the third Bad Wolves record I actually wrote and sold to them when we split up. And Winds of Change came out, and I was like, "How do you want me to do this?" And he was like, "Just do it like this." And I went in and did it and sent it to him, and I forgot. I totally forgot about it. And then I sent it to my lawyer. I was like, "Hey, this is gonna happen, whatever." And they released the song in 2020, and I posted it, and then I started getting phone calls. Like my record label, management, the lawyer, everyone was like, "What the fuck? Like you're not cleared to do this. Like you're in violation of your contract." And I was like, "Here's the email. I sent this to you guys last year." And then I think the song went number one within 2 hours of me getting these calls. And they were like, "Oh, never mind, never mind." So it's just like it was a funny. It was like the whole scenario was funny to me, and I was already like, I was already on the shit list because of all the things I had posted and talked about, and it was just one more thing that they were getting mad at me about. And so, interestingly enough, on our record, so I caught up with Bunny and Jelly in Vegas in March or so, and I was finishing up recording vocals on With a Vengeance. I'd recorded 19 songs, and there is a friend of mine, Nina, who in 2023 she had beat brain cancer, and Jelly Roll was her favorite artist, and she had to do like a TED talk in Orlando at this big, it was like a 3,000 seater thing, and uh, her dad is one of my best friends, and he was like, "Hey," he's like, "Do you think you could get Jelly Roll to like send her a video saying like thanks?" I was like, "I got way better than that." So I text Jelly, I told him the whole situation. He made this video introducing her on stage, So she
Wow.
had no idea. And yeah, and this is that's that's who he is. That's who those people are. They never forget where they came from, and they're just salt of the earth people. And she went out and she did. It was on a big jumbotron, and then she gave her pitch, and sadly in November of 2024, the cancer had come back, and she passed away. And so
Mm,
my father had died a few weeks before, 2 months before, and I went in and I wrote this song called "Man in the Mirror," and I wrote part of the song was about my father, being with my father and watching him die from cancer, and then also going and being with Nina's family and having to watch them go through that, at two different scenarios where she was 30 years old, my dad was 75, and I played Jelly and Bunny the song backstage at her book signing concert, and I was like, "Would you sing on this?" And I offered him money, and he was like, "Dude," he's like, "I'm not taking your money."
wow.
He's like, he's like, "You were on my first number one single." He's like, "You didn't ask me for anything. Like, you've always been real. You always had our back when when you were on top of the world. Like, you didn't have to do shit." And he's like, "I don't forget that." And so, this in December we're gonna go in and he's gonna track vocals, and it's gonna be it's just gonna be a nice tribute, for her family and for her legacy. And I think we're gonna be donating some of the proceeds to Cancer Foundation, and we're going to figure out all the details on what that's going to look like, and so that's something that people can look forward to. That'll be coming out at either the end of the year or early next year. And yeah, that's a beautiful thing about music, man. It's like
Yeah.
you can take you can take tragedy and you can sort of turn it into something greater than the sum of its parts, sort of like how I did with Zombie from the Cranberries. It's when you and I think that's what music is. And on a spiritual level, I think that's what musicians are made to make music for. It's sort of um easy for a lot of professional musicians to get caught up in self and selfishness, and you know uh, but I think it's like we're given these gifts, and it's to be of service,
Yeah.
and we get something. Obviously everybody get, when we get validation and stuff, but like I never cared about being famous, really. It wasn't, I didn't, you know, I went platinum at 36 years old. I was already an adult with a real job and my own company, and had already been sober for almost 10 years. And, it just happened, and then it got taken away, and it was like, well, whatever. And now it's, the phone started ringing again, and job offers started coming in, and, I got a big scary manager who's managed, Chester from Lincoln Park, and was the guy that got Korn their record deal in 1994, and has managed Sublime and Rage Against the Machine. And he's the dude who's responsible for putting Slash and Guns N' Roses. He's like an absolute legend. Um,
Nice.
and I just, I'm very, his nickname is Cheese. Everyone calls him Cheese. And I'm just very grateful that I'm having all these new experiences now, and I think it's because my spiritual frequency has shifted. Where I did not experience the music industry with people who have faith, and I didn't experience it with people who were honorable, or people who had integrity. I just experienced the music industry of, and it's fine if this is your MO. It is a business. Uh, and I just experienced the bottom lines. How much money can we make? How much can we exploit this artist? How much can we get the artist to get the fans to give us their money? How can we not pay them? And that's just unfortunately the rate. That's when you're not supposed to complain about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to criticize it, because the hammer will come down. And it's just the reality of the industry. And I think the public knows that now, You know, it's been made obvious with a lot of the emails that were leaked by the government, you know, about some of these massive companies and how they feel about the fans and how they feel about working class people. And, you know, a lot of the sort of people who are waving the flag of cancel culture are also these people who they've never had a real job. You
Yeah.
know, their mommy and daddy paid for them to go to nice schools. They live in nice, beautiful houses. They don't struggle. They don't know what struggle is. And you know, they just don't feel they don't it's not because they're bad people. They just are completely unaware of the actual ground root reality of the cost of taking advantage of the consumers. Uh, you know, and then when if you're a musician, you're not allowed to have a moral compass. And you're certainly, if you have a microphone, you're certainly not as should not be speaking out of line, you know.
Oh yeah.
So it's a weird thing, man. It's a weird it's an industry, you know. It isn't
Yeah.
it's an industry like any other.
We could go down the whole rabbit hole with like Prince and Michael Jackson and anybody that started speaking up, but yeah, it's a whole nother episode, I think.
Well, I don't want to end up like those guys. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's a
So
yeah, it's thug life out here, bro. It's like it is the industry's run like a mafia. It's like gangsters, you know. And I respect it. You know I come from that, you know. I grew up in that environment. It's just corporate, you know.
yeah. Now, before getting with a vengeance, putting that together, I know the last time like I ran into you in person, you were out on the road with El Nino. How did that come together for you?
So El Nino was like it was totally random. Again, my dad had my father passed away in August of 2024. And after his funeral, Dave had called me and said, "Hey man, like, can you do an El Nino tour? Like, I need somebody to fill in for my singer. It's an emergency." And I was like, "Yeah, like, when's the tour?" He's like, "We leave on Wednesday." I was like, so I was like, "Okay, so when are we rehearsing?" He's like, "You got to fly out tomorrow." So I literally flew to Dallas, and yeah, and then I flew to Dallas. We had 3 rehearsals. I had to have my girlfriend had to write all the lyrics on cue cards, these big white cue cards, like oak tag. And I'm a fan of El Nino. I grew up with them. You know, my old like when I was 16 years old, we opened for El Nino when I was in like 1997. And I've been friends with the guys, you know, forever through all the iterations of the band and all the lineup changes. But I didn't, you know, there's one thing of knowing and listening to songs and actually performing them. And so, you know, we basically had 3 rehearsals and then flew to Germany, and we had a one sit day, a drive day. And then we started in Poland, and I played the first 3 shows with all the lyrics on the floor, like in a cue card. I really couldn't do much moving around, and it was pretty terrible. And you know, there was even a YouTube video. People were like, "What the fuck? This sucks." I was like, "Hey guys, I apologize. This is absolutely horrible. I'm the singer. I'm like, I learned these songs in 3 days. It was a total. I was at a funeral. I had to learn these songs in 3 days. It was an emergency. I apologize." I'm like, but you know, but the rest of the tour was great, and you know, the guys were like, they're sober. The bus was sober. It's a big family environment. You know, I've known Dave and Laz since I'm again 16 years old, and you know, and I know Sal and Jess and Miguel and Miggy. They were great, man. It was just an awesome time. We were out with this band Ectomorph, and so we did a bus share with them, and it was just I forgot all the band drama, and I saw all these guys working together, and I was like, fuck, this is what a band is supposed to be. And this is also what it's like on tour when nobody does drugs, right? And you know,
Yeah.
what sorry, I got a spam call. It was all ones. I'm like, that's weird. Uh, what I came to learn from reuniting with Chris is that, you know, I was sober and I was living in the back lounge of the tour bus, and everybody was drinking and using. And it was actually, there were a couple of issues that had happened that, band members had to sign contracts that it was a $10,000 fine if they brought drugs on the bus. And so then it just became a secret. And so I was not, you know, when I left Bad Wolves, I was under the impression that it had mostly to do with political things, but a lot of the split happened because of drug addiction. And I still get, I saw somebody posted, you know, they have a new singer and like that's great, and there's nobody left in the band. They've had the band's been. I left the band in January 2021, and they've had 11 members quit. 11 since I left, including me, and I still get blamed for this. And it's like everything else, man. Drugs will destroy your band. Like, I don't care if you're recreationally using, especially when your band gets popular, and if you're partying a little bit and you're an addict and you're trying to maintain it, when you start making a lot of money, your money is all going to go to your drugs. And then what
Yeah.
happens is that people are blowing all their money on drugs, and they're like, why does the singer have a brand new car? Or why does he do this? It's like, I don't spend any money on any alcohol, any drugs. I'm saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that you're spending on cocaine parties, And so I completely had no idea that any of this was going on, especially during COVID, because I was in the studio working, and apparently, this whole plan to have me removed for political reasons was going on during these like drug parties that I wasn't invited to, obviously. And so, uh, yeah, I'm just grateful that I don't have to deal with that. And watching El Nino be sober and the guys loved each other and they broke each other's balls and had fun. I was like, fuck, because I was like kind of like, oh, I don't ever want to be in a band again. And I fell in love with it again because of those guys. And I'm like, this is the right way. And the model, of that camaraderie and that brotherhood is like what I based who I was choosing to be in a band with this time around, you know? And so the El Nino thing had a profound effect on me in multiple ways. And I needed to be, I was surrounded by death. I had all these people died on me. My brother-in-law was killed in a car accident in the same year that my dad died of cancer and Nina died. And I had a guy that I sponsored at AA commit suicide. And like, it was a lot. It
Yeah.
was just, it was like one thing after another. I go, God, this is like crazy. And, and then I got a call, we're going to be very anonymous about this, but cause I'm not, but I got a call when the El Nino tour happened. I did a few headlining Tommy Vext shows. My friend passed away, and then I was like, you know what? I need to go home and collect myself. And 2 days after getting back home, I got a phone call from one of the biggest bands in the world, and then I moved in with the guitar player, and their singer had quit, and he had quit the band a couple times. And I'm the guy that people call when the singer is having either substance abuse problems or quits or whatever. And it's funny because I'm like canceled and Tommy Vext is fucking blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, I'm always the guy that shows up and does his job and there's never any problems, you know?
Yeah.
And so, it's crazy to me that if record labels will invest in people who are smoking crack over a black Republican, which I don't even know if I identify as being a Republican anymore. I don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah.
So but it's like crazy, right? It's like, oh, like we gotta get, like, we got millions of dollars to fucking blow this band up. Who are we gonna put it through? Like not that black Republican guy, this crackhead guy. He'll do, You're like, what the fuck? So anyway, not that. Listen, and I say that lovingly. I used to smoke crack too. So it's not, it's been 20 years, but I don't say it in a derogatory term. It's just, as someone who has smoked crack, that's not the kind of person you want to be in control of a multi-million-dollar company. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Me as a crackhead, not, you don't want to give me any money because we know where it's going to go, right to crack. And fucking,
Tyrone Biggins.
yeah, literally. And so, and so that's how and so, it was like one series of events, and then that lit a fire under my ass. And I went into the studio with this fucking band that sold like 20 million records and got busy and started writing. And amidst that time, I had made peace with the record label, and the owner of the label wanted me to also is the owner of the record label with Bad Wolves, and they wanted me to sing on a song with them and go publicly and say, "Hey, kumbaya, everything's all good." And there was supposed to be a tour with this me fronting this huge band, and Bad Wolves was going to open. So we had planned this thing out, and their singer wound up getting signed to Falling in Reverse.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, and so that track never happened, and then whatever internal things have been going on, the entire band quit. And so I had dinner with John from Bad Wolves. We went out to Kabuki Sushi in Las Vegas with Zoltan from Five Finger Death Punch, who used to manage Bad Wolves, and like sort of as a peacekeeper. And it was fine. Like, we both apologized for what had happened, and we were like, "Oh, it is what it is." And and I was like, I think you should call Chris, the original guitar player, because Bad Wolves was originally, it was just three of us. It was me, John, and Chris. And basically, I was filling in for Five Finger in 2017, and I was singing for Westfield Massacre, and Bad Wolves was like a studio project. It wasn't even my real band. And Westfield Massacre, they thought I was going to join Five Finger, and they petitioned me to buy the name. So they bought Westfield Massacre from me for like 20 grand. And that was just the money that was owed to me because I had financially floated all the music videos and stuff. So I just got my money back, gave them the name. And then, when I got signed, Bad Wolves was the band. And so I was like, you got to at least have the original guitar player. And then Kevin Creekman, who was played in the Tommy Vext band and in Peyton Parrish, who's one of my really good friends. I was like, you should call him. He knows all the songs because he toured with me in Tommy Vext. And in 2021, we only played one new song. So the whole set list was Bad Wolf songs. I was like, he knows our whole set. And so that was supposed to be what was going to happen. They were going to get a third singer and then have Chris and Kevin. And the band that I was singing for, the band that I was like making a record for, their singer came back and was like, "I'm sorry, like, you have my job back." And they were like, "All right, And obviously, you should never part with a singer, especially if you're a big arena band. And I was like, "All right, cool." And I was like, "I'm gonna keep my lyrics and melodies. You guys keep your music. Peace out." And so I wound up moving back to LA from Vegas, and I went in the studio to work with this producer, Hiram, who he had worked on some of my solo record stuff. And I was like, all right, I have 9 songs start to finish with a click track and no music. And then Chris called me, and he was like, "Hey bro, I saw you move back to LA. Like, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Nothing." So we went out to a comedy show and dinner, and he was like, I quit the band. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, and he explained why. And it was this, he's like, he's a newborn baby. And he's like, I went to the studio, and it's an unsafe environment. I can't be around this. He's like, I'm sober. I can't, you know, it's, it's completely insane. And I can't have anything to do with this in my life. He's like, I'm a father. And I was like, I understand. I was like, well, I don't understand what you're saying. He was like, we got teary eyed, and he was like, he's like, can we just do a band together again? And I was like, and it was like, and I was like, dude, I've been waiting for you to ask me this for years.
No.
And I'm like, I fucking miss playing on stage with you. I was like, you were always the realest motherfucker in the band. And I'll be honored to do this again. And
Yeah.
so that was it. And then it
God's
was just like,
timing in it, I guess. You
well,
know?
and then Chris had written a ton of songs for the new Bad Wolves record and sent them to me. And I sent him the songs that I wrote for the Big Famous Band to him. And then Hiram came in the middle and fucking, that was it. And then we were like, oh, but well, like we have 19 tracks. Like this is crazy. So it was
Nice.
like the work that I was doing for this band that there was a point like for like a week or two where I was like, fuck, I wasted all this time and like they didn't pay me. They never paid me. They promised me a salary. Like I worked for this shit for 8 or 9 months, I think, and they just like stiffed me. And it's all good. Like, it is what it is. It's a music business. And he went and wrote a bunch of songs that he thought was gonna be the new Bad Wolf shit. And it just fucking flopped. And we figured it out. And
Nice.
yeah, and so like now, this record, for like we're gonna be announcing and we're dropping our first single July 17th. It's called Shared Light. Probably the next day, we're gonna be announcing that a third member of Bad Wolves has joined the band. So there'll now be three members of Bad Wolves and With a Vengeance. And it's just this is the spiritual part of like when men put their egos down and can apologize like brothers, and then you realize like what we created and what we made was special. And I think other people wanted to have control over that, and they wanted to be, uh there's a saying, you can only have one quarterback.
Yeah.
And the band got really famous, and then the band got famous off songs that I wrote that created jealousy. um there was just all kinds of internalized problems. And then again, when you have somebody who like I was so unaware because I was in my sober bubble. I was in the back lounge, I wasn't participating because I wanted to be removed from the drinking. I just didn't know how bad the drugs were. But I would wake up early. Like we play the show. I wake up in the morning. I walk around the city and get breakfast, and then I find a gym, and then I go to an AA meeting, and that's my life. That was my
Yeah.
life, you know. And when you live like that, and everyone is living the old life, you're not. I don't know the conversations. People are having imaginary resentments that I'm not. People thought. I was told that people thought I thought I was better than everyone else, and I was like, dude, based on what? They're like, well, you never hung out. I was like, I'm sober. I can't hang out. I
Yeah.
can't come in the dressing room. You know, like even in our agreement, we agreed that they could do drugs in the dressing room, and I never went in the dressing room anymore. I couldn't have been more accommodating, right? I wasn't like everyone needs to be sober. I was like, please just don't do drugs on the bus, you know? And that's just how it is. It's just and now I'm in a band, everybody's sober.
Yeah.
You know what
So,
I mean?
your experience, you were saying what your experience out with El Nino was the same type of thing. That's what kind of motivated you to put, was that like a prerequisite when you were looking for this band that everybody should be, in recovery?
Well, not everybody is like 3 of 5 guys are in recovery. The other 2 guys are just sober because they're clean lifestyle people.
Okay.
One guy's ex-military and a fitness guy, and the other guy's a fitness guy, and they just don't. Some people just don't. They're like, I don't want to drink. I don't want to get high. Like, why?
Yeah. There's normies
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Regular
just live
people.
healthy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha.
People who it would never occur to them to smoke crack. Right? Like, it's like what?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's going to help me get an extra rep or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Maybe a heart attack.
and even in the process of all this stuff, it's like, it's like it changes everything. Like even my manager has been clean for I think 30 years, you
Nice.
know, And so now, like, I'm constantly surrounded by people who are more in a spiritual mindset and a physical, mental, more healthy mindset, where it's like I don't have to, like, you know, I already know that everybody, probably everyone in the band will go to the gym together on the day off. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's
Yeah.
probably what's going to happen. You know, and that's important. I think it's important for, if you're in a band with people, you have to do the same things. You can't, and if everybody in the band is an alcoholic, that's fine. If they're all drunk and partying all the time, yeah, Motley Crue, like, man, no worries. There's tons of bands. And then hopefully you just don't die and you age out of it.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to mix and match people who are in, like, completely different ideologies, you know, perspectives on life. It's like you just got to find your tribe, and that's what I feel like this is.
Yeah. How did you and our brother Austin connect?
Well, Austin's also sober, and then so Cody is one of my longtime brothers in recovery. Cody was the tour manager for Five Finger Death Punch, and so Cody and I have traveled the world together and gone to meetings, and like, his birthday's coming up actually this in 2 weeks. But he introduced me to Austin at a barbecue at his house, and I knew who Austin was because Austin. So John from Battles, who me and Chris started Battles with, he was the drummer of Devildriver, and he
Yeah.
got Dez fired him. It's actually funny because when me and the band split, Dez called me and gave me a 3-hour rundown on exactly what happened. And I was like, bro, you could have called me. I've known Dez for 20 years. I'm like, why didn't you call me when I started the band with him and told me all this shit? And apparently John tried to do the same thing and have Dez kicked out of his own band. And
Wow.
it backfired, and Dez fired him. And Austin came in on last minute notice, replaced John, like, didn't miss a beat, absolutely flawless. Uh, and Devildriver's drums are, like, extremely complicated. Same thing with Chimera. And
Yeah.
then he currently plays with Chimera, and I opened tours for Chimera with Divine Heresy in 2007. So, like, those records, like Resurrection, is, like, in my opinion, one of the most phenomenal Midwest metal bands and records. Like, that's a staple to me. And the fact
Yeah.
that he can play those songs, it's like, and Chimera's had Kevin Talley, the Andals. They've had some of the most phenomenal underrated metal drummers. And Austin just does that like butter. He's just like, it's like, you're like,
Yeah.
bro, he doesn't have to, he's weird. It's just like, he's just so intrinsically in the pocket. Um, that it's just, my thing is always get a drummer that's better than the songs that you're giving them. And
Yeah.
this way, if we have to, like, make anything, if we decide we want to go super heavy or anything crazy, no problem. But for him, he can yawn and play any of the even most complicated Bad Wolf songs. It's like nothing to him.
Now I know, we've talked a lot about people in recovery, and that's something that we share together. Recently we were chatting amongst each other about an interview that blew up that I recently had with Phil Labonte of
Yeah.
All That Remains. And I encourage people to actually watch the interview before just going by, headlines and picking apart, certain things, because, I had fellow veterans coming at me like they didn't even watch the interview. You're like, why didn't you stick up for us in mental health? And it's like, I do, I'm always open about being in recovery, and part of my mental health journey, going to a therapy, and part of my mental health journey is doing this podcast, and part of my mental health journey is, going to the meetings and stuff. But I know it's kind of, alcohol is but a symptom for a lot of us. I
Mhm.
want to get your input on that topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, I love Phil. I've I've opened for All That Remains in 2007 and 8 with Divine Heresy. I've just been a fan of the band. I know his story. Like, he's another singer who was charged with the task of filling in for Ivan Moody for Five Finger Death Punch, and has done, did a great job in emergency situations. And he's just a stand-up guy. And he's a gun guy, he's a two-way guy, he's libertarian. And unfortunately, in his career, he's been targeted by far left extremists, journalists. And so, for the people who don't understand this, people like I and Phil get taken widely out of context so they could create, buzz headlines, is because predominantly the journalists at these rock places, they're all liberal arts majors. Before they go into journalism, they go into liberal arts, they get their formal liberal indoctrination papers, and it's like, again, a bunch of upper middle class to upper class privileged people who read in textbooks about the black experience and the indigenous. They read about, like, and these things are, these people pretend to be scholars over social and cultural issues they don't experience and don't know, because they're reading books about honey. I could sit here and explain to you honey, what it is, what does it taste like, but until you put it in your mouth and experience what it is, you can't concede to your innermost self what that experience is. And it's sort of a pseudo intellectual narcissism that they sort of operate from. And anybody that is remotely uh different from them, they view as a threat. And people like us get attacked. And so, this is another reason why metal journalism, it's sort of crashed. It's extremely, for example, Sony fired everyone from Metal Injection and Metal Sucks and that whole network, except Frank Godla, who I went to high school with. I was in a high school band with, and I love Frank to death. And his dad was fucking great. Rest in peace to his dad. Like, that's how I know his whole family. I know his sister, his mom. I remember their dog growing up. We used to, like, I used to go to their apartment and we, listen to heavy metal and trade records and go on road trips to go to shows together. And Frank is a pretty even balanced guy, and he's a sensitive guy, but he's like central left. Like, we need, you want to be central right? Cool. You want to be central, but this sort of this the political dogma where people make it their complete and total identity and religion is extremely destructive. And so
Mhm.
that's why Phil's statements are completely misrepresented in headlines, because he's a two-way guy. Those people don't understand firearms. They don't understand guns. They live in cities where, like, guns are bad and guns kill. Like, they don't understand the psychology of owning property and defending it. They don't understand the self defense. They're like, call it's crazy too, because it's the same people who don't understand because they've never experienced violence, right? Like, I've experienced true violence. I've experienced gang violence. I was almost murdered by my brother, right? And will tell you this: the police will not get there in time.
Yeah.
I
The
don't
same
care
people that
what.
wanted to defund them are
Well,
saying call them.
but they're also, yeah, but that's the thing too. It's like these same people are like, we hate the police, defund the police. But if they get punched in the mouth, they're like, call the police. And so, unfortunately for guys like Phil and me and, Aaron Lewis, like, they make it sort of this, like, trendy black coat of hating on these people, and it doesn't work anymore. And it's just sort of like a little echo chamber. And then what they do is they're like, yeah, fuck this person, and most of them are failed musicians. Most of these writers are all people who failed to have a career on their instrument, and then they become professional writers. they put out this slop, and then they go drink at the craft bar with their other idiot friends and congratulate themselves on being social justice warriors. Like, you know, like acknowledgement is the least sacrificial form of activism, right? Like when people talk about activism, I'm like, crying about what you believe in or crying about things and whining about it is it's the most least involved form of activism. Standing up for what you believe and losing multi-millions of dollars, endorsements, companies getting ostracized by society, that is a form of physical activism where you actually take what you believe and sacrifice for it. Like, these people are not activists. They're like just crying, pissing, and 90% of them, they're so frail that if they saw you in person, they either like suck your dick or run the other way. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, hey, and then pretend like hoping that you don't know that they were the ones that wrote the shitty article about you. And this has happened to me countless times, countless times, and it's just unfortunate. And
Yeah.
so, people like Rock Feed and Rock Documented, now you're starting to see citizen journalism affect the rock industry because people don't want to, fans don't want to sit here and hear how shitty every band is and how everyone's a piece of shit. It's like, dude, we just want to hear about the music. Tell us about the song. Like, I want, what's the new album sound like? What's the
Yeah.
songs about? Where did they record? Who produced the record? Just the 90s journalism stuff. That's what I want to know. Who did the artwork on the record? That's what I'm interested in. They're like, this person voted for the. I don't care who someone voted for. I have tons of friends who vote both directions. I just want to listen to their music.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and everybody's at that point where fucking everyone's sick of it. It's over, And so, and my take is this: like, I think that, right? I have I'm legally diagnosed with acute post traumatic stress disorder. Uh, I also am a drug addict and an alcoholic who's in recovery. Personally, I have been in therapy on and off for almost 2 decades. Okay. Uh, I I think that Phil's life experiences are drastically different than mine. He has not had his child murdered. He has not been murdered. He hasn't been stabbed, shot at. He wasn't a drug dealer. He hasn't been jumped and had his skull cracked open. He hasn't been canceled and been betrayed. He hasn't, there's a lot of things like that he hasn't been through that would lead him to believe that therapy is for chicks, right? I don't think that therapy is for women. And I do believe that what he said, that men need active, like a life purpose in
Hmm.
order to recover. But there's an intrinsic part of this that that has to be addressed. You
Yeah.
cannot connect the dots until you collect the dots. And as
Yeah.
men, we in our generation, right, we have a responsibility to not go the way that our fathers went and act like nothing is wrong, right? We have to actually identify this does not work. It's just like taking inventory, right? If you, whether you own a shop or you say you have a gun store and you have a bunch of, old artillery and this shit doesn't, it's from fucking 100 years ago, and this shit doesn't work. You can't put a bunch of expired, explosives into firearms and use them, and they won't work, right? It's however you want to look at it, you have to do inventory, and sometimes the things inside of us, right? And we learn this in recovery.
Yeah.
We have to take an accurate sense of self-appraisal over what traumas and lessons and mistakes are of use and what parts of ourselves are no longer valuable, and that's becoming from being a boy to a man, is the process of discarding that stuff. And it's a constant process, right? That's why
Oh, yeah.
old people are wise, because they engage in a constant process of self-development. And so, yes, therapy is not going to, for men, we are task oriented and we have to live a life of purposeful meaning. And we can't just talk about our problems. But if we don't identify the root causes and conditions of our problems,
Hmm.
we cannot take contrary physical action to the direction that those issues are driving us in, that no longer serve our lives, our communities, or our families. So part of what he said is true. Part of what he said I find to be untrue in my experience. And I just don't think that what any of what he said is that controversial or that big of a deal.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
know?
I agree. I think people need to watch the entire interview for the context of the conversation, because I think it's more closer to what we're talking about than people realize. You know,
Sure, but
um,
that doesn't get clicks, you know? That's
no,
the other thing too, is like journalism is like if you're a fucking journalist like in 2026, like that's like being a billionaire in Monopoly. Like you're not even a real person. You're not a fucking real person. The legacy media people don't, they literally don't tell the truth, right? You can go on Fox News and they're literally lying about one specific thing that CNN is lying in a completely opposite direction. And
yeah,
the news is not information anymore. The news is no longer information. It's just propagation. And it's the same thing. And unfortunately, the people who want to, like, I want to be a journalist, they look up to these fucking butt puppets. And then they emulate what these pieces of shit who have sold their soul and will say anything for a paycheck to the public. And they copy it and think that they're like it, they're a valid human being. So you have to understand, it's like, like people like all the dudes in metal sucks. They all, it's like it's not even worth bashing them. They all got fired because they stuck to this wokeness to the point where, like, bro, no, like they're communists, right? They're literal communists, but also it's weird too because they're also Zog boys. Like they will literally be social justice warriors for everything, but secretly, I know a lot of these guys. Like they're racist against Muslims. They absolutely hate Muslims, so they will never say anything to defend some of the genocide and the horrors and atrocities going on in the Middle East against women and children, but they'll pretend that they give a shit that some dude in a band is falsely accused of domestic violence. But they won't care if 10,000 little girls get killed, murdered, and run over with tanks. It's absolute clown world hypocrisy, and I'm glad that all those people got fired, and I hope they never find jobs doing anything ever again for the amount of drama and destruction they caused in our culture.
yeah. I was just, I mean, selfishly, I was just happy that they were spelling my name correctly and the podcast name correctly.
Free publicity, bro.
I,
It's
I,
free
I
pub.
needed that, but yeah, I do. I mean, I highly encourage people to actually watch the entire interview, because it's not that far off of what we were just talking about. Now back to With a Vengeance. The single's coming out July 17th. Shared Light. Um, talks of, I know you were putting something on social media asking people, hey, what town should we come in? Is there a tour in the works? And like, when's the full album?
So, well, the album's being mixed right now. I think we're at 9 songs out of 13, or I don't know. It depends on how we release. We've had conversations about releasing 6 or 7 song EPs and maybe dropping 3 of them, and you know what I mean, and putting out 21 songs like that, like 3 different releases, or if we're gonna do an album or whatever. But I did talk to our agent today, and they're putting together a US run for November, December, maybe as early as late October, and and then next year it'll be everywhere, wherever. So
Nice.
we're gonna, they were like, "Are you gonna be playing Bad Wolf songs?" I'm like, "Yeah, we wrote. I'm gonna be playing the songs that I wrote that nobody else in the band wrote. Well, played on the
Yeah.
records. Yes, we're gonna play the hit songs. So, we're gonna play all of our new shit. We're gonna play a bunch of classics, um, and that's it. And again, like me and Chris, and the third member, who we haven't announced yet, we attempted to purchase the name from John for $1 million. We brought in an outside investor, who owns multiple companies, and he saw the value, and he was like, I'll go in with you guys on this as partners, and let's just buy the name. And it was like a 5 or 6 week process, and trying to get a hold of somebody who's rarely lucid, and it was like, yeah, let's do it, and then no, and then ultimately it didn't go through. And to be honest, like, it's the psychological state of, I think John's just in a place where, like, just attention makes him feel good at this point. Like,
Mm.
I don't even know if he was ever really serious, and I think he just, like, enjoyed wasting people's time. um and obviously it doesn't really matter anymore what the band name is. you know and I think we're at a point where, I sort of look at Falling in Reverse, and Ronnie got in trouble years ago, and he's since reinvented himself, and um recreated his life. But there's not, at some point, there's no reason for Ronnie to do Escape the Fate.
Yeah.
There's no point. And he's headlining arenas and doing, and bigger than that, and he'll throw them on some shows, and he'll help them out, you know and that might be the direction that this is going in the next couple of years. And so, like, we got nothing but, I hope everybody's okay. We hope everyone finds sobriety. We hope people find a God of their own understanding. And what we're, as much as we're given, we will offer help, and that's sort of the place that we're coming from. But yeah, it's just the name. It just made sense. It's like, it's my favorite Die Hard movie, Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yeah.
And when I was watching it, and I was like, I was like, me and Chris are literally like Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. And I was like, bro, this is literally us. He's like, yo, that's a good name. Like, yo, is that a band name? And so I called my lawyer,
I'm
and
surprised it wasn't yet.
I so I had like 10 other different band name ideas, and all of them were taken. And there's a thing called squatting. People squat, like, people will trademark a band name and sit on it. And then when you, hoping that someone will buy it from them. And so we were like, we went through a bunch of cool names. They were all taken. And I was like, this has to be taken. And I'm like, let me just send this to Tom and see what he says. That's our attorney's Tom Brackey. And he's like, yeah, no, it's totally free and clear. He's like, I'm like, what about in the UK? He's like, no, globally, there's nobody owns this. I was like, buy it right now. He's like, okay. And so even before we told everybody or had a logo or anything, I was like, just buy it, just in case. And then yeah, I sent it to management, and I was like, it's kind of writes itself,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And so everyone's sort of been saying, like, the fans. Bad Wolves fans are called the Wolf. We call them the Wolf Pack. I named them that when I was in the band, and um, we're just, the people have been saying, like, just the Wolves are back. And so it's
Yeah.
like, we're back with a vengeance. So I think people are really gonna dig the record. It's it sounds like where Nation and Disobey left off. It sounds like it's what the band would have sounded like if I would have stayed. And again, like, Chris's style and my style are intrinsic parts of what made that a thing. And then I think we've just, with no disrespect to my former band members, at a talent level, we've upgraded everybody. Everything is more superior than what it was from a talent perspective. And it's also attributed to a lack of drug and alcohol addiction. you
Yeah.
know and so that's what it comes down to. Because, like, I'll tell you this, my worst day singing sober is not is light years better than my best performance under the influence.
Yeah. Now, another thing that I noticed before we get ready to wrap up, I just wanted to touch on it. Did it with when they made their recent announcement for their new singer? I thought I seen something where like your following on your socials like went up that same day or something. Is that
Yeah, I mean, I think I gained about 5,000 followers on Instagram. And what was it? Instagram and 2 Facebook pages, and it's just they announced it, and everybody, my streaming on Spotify went up. Like everybody was reminded, because I've been kind of gone for a while, and everyone was like, "Where the fuck is Tom? Like, why are they doing this?" And everyone was like, "Why don't you just get Vex back? Like, why don't you just get Tommy Vex back?" And yeah, so the
so
thing
it
that's
kind of helped the
interesting.
new project get more recognition or eyes, right?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, we shot the music video like 5 weeks before the release, right? The album, the first single's coming out, the music video, everything will drop July 17th. But we've had that single ready and the video ready for like over a month. And we posted 6 weeks before, like, hey, we're gonna fucking release this. And it was for multiple reasons. Like I know John, and John is like in a weird psychological competition with everything. Like he puts himself at odds with everything and everyone. And that he also has burner accounts. He's been stalking me for years. And I'm pretty sure that he freaked out while they were in the middle of making their record and then rushed to put out a single so they could be first. And thank you. I appreciate it. And you know, like we weren't really worried. Like it's the thing is that and I've had the new singer try to start online drama with me, and I have nothing bad to say to her. I have nothing bad to say about her. She's just some kid, and she probably thought this was going to be her big break, you know. And good luck to her. I had her singing teacher, Melissa Cross, has been my singing teacher for 25 years. The band's lawyer, Eric, called me and asked me not to destroy them on the internet. The CEO of the record label, part of my living amends to with that is that I don't fucking shit on them, and so I only have well wishes for these people. I don't think that they're making good decisions, but it's not my monkey and it's not my circus.
Yeah.
But it's I know John, and like he just I knew they were going to put out something. I knew it's not, and I don't think it's bad. It's like if you go to McDonald's and you're like, I love McDonald's, and you show up to McDonald's one day and they're selling Chinese food, you're going to be like, 95% of the people are going to be like, what the fuck is this? And 5% of the people will be like, I'll try the dim sum, I guess. Like, I'm hungry. And that's sort of what happened here. Um, and I think it was a difficult battle. I personally think she's a better singer than DL. I don't think that DL is a rock star. I think he's a rock star on guitar and bass, but he's not a frontman. And he's awkward and weird. And like you can't replace somebody like Ivan Moody or Corey Taylor with a weirdo. And I performed at that level for the band. And so I think he was just awkward, and I think she'll do much better. But the problem is that the entire band quit. So it's a brand new band, and so I think we're also living in a time where the public is sick and tired of being told something is something and it's not,
Yeah.
right? Like they just the marketing of everything, whether it's like TV shows, or or pharmaceutical drugs or vaccines or, you know, to like the men can have babies things. Like people are tired of this. They're like, stop telling us up is down and down is up. They're like, yeah, okay, cool. It's cool band, cool song. It's not Bad Wolves. You shouldn't be like, stop calling it this. You
Yeah.
know, and that's what when I read the comments, you know, it's not my opinion. This is just like what I've observed. Because I'm doing market research. I'm like, what are people saying? What do they think? And everyone's saying the same thing. And so, you know, for me, it's a positive because they're, you know, even though that they're using my name, which they bought, it's his now, and all that, you know, all of the streaming and the DSPs and all the subscribers, none of that's gone up since I left. They haven't increased any of their followers on anything since I left. And so I built that, and then they have it, and they're doing with it as they will. But for me, we're not in competition in the marketplace, right? So there's no longer like, you know, it's like we got Mike Tyson and then another Mike Tyson. You're like, well, which one's the real Mike Tyson? You know, it's like the real Slim Shady. It's like if D12 kicked out Eminem and then kept trying to be D12, and everyone's like, where's Eminem? And now it's like none of the members, and they got Fergie doing Eminem's part, and they're like, who's this girl? You know, like, so it's just weird. It's just like all weird and not working, and it's, you know, as far as what the fans are saying. But I think that I think that girl is very talented, and I think if they're smart, they will erase all the music and rewrite it based around her vocals because she's a better singer than anyone in that project is a songwriter. They're not good songwriters, and she has a phenomenal voice, and she's marketable, and they should just stop trying to force this girl who's actually talented into like an old shoe that I used to wear, and just remake the whole thing and just make it original and good. But that takes courage, and it takes work, and you know, it's hard.
Yeah. Now, like I said, before we get ready to wrap up, you mentioned tour around November, December timeframe. I'm hoping Cleveland makes the list because we definitely gotta hang out soon.
I hope so. Today we talked about Florida and Texas. That's what we talked about, and Nevada and California, and the Northeast. So most likely, if we end up in doing anything in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, it would make sense to me that we would be also doing Ohio and Wisconsin and Michigan and Illinois, and yeah.
Nice.
So
well, hope to see you.
Fingers crossed. And we are and Des Moines and so on and so forth.
For sure, man. Well, Tommy, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, man. I know we could go on and on,
yeah, man.
You know,
thanks for
talking about things, but excited to, you know, see what the future holds, man. You're definitely back with a vengeance.
One day at a time, baby.
One day at a time. Thanks again, brother.
Thanks, man.
Listen up! Hold on to your seats! Grab your girls, grab your beers!
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Phil Labonte, Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts!